If you're like me, you've played a Call of Duty game once or twice, maybe even 3 times, maybe far too much. And the core to any good COD comes down to the weaponry. And despite there being thousands of individual guns across the series, there's some classics out there that just stick out above the rest. The overpowered, the goofy, the icons, the kind of weapons that just make you feel something. Whether that something is nostalgia or PTSD. Now, I thought long and hard about how to best format this video. I thought maybe of making like a sliding scale where all the weapons got more and more deadly or sexy as we went. I thought about doing a tier list because according to all the comments, I'm a Call of Duty YouTuber, and that's kinda just what we do. I even made this rad thumbnail for it and everything. But then I thought that I'd actually have to rank them and like give you the pros and cons and all of that garbage, and that's just too much work when in reality this video, like all of my videos, is just an excuse to talk about video games for a bit and distract me from all my real issues that my therapist was helping me work through until I fucked up and put their favorite Call of Duty map on my list of the worst and now won't return my phone calls. So this is what we're gonna do, all right? We're gonna keep things simple and we're just gonna go through each weapon category one by one, eventually leading to the one weapon that I guarantee you haven't thought about in years, but I still see every time I close my eyes. Okay, let's kick this thing off then with assault rifles. And I'm gonna front load this with actually my 3 favorite weapons in Call of Duty history. And first is the MW2 Scar. In a game full of OP weapons that all had 0 recoil, high rate of fire, and killed people before they even had a chance to register for their own baby shower, the Scar H fell firmly in the middle. It's not the best, but it's also not the worst. Kind of unremarkable in every way, except when it came time for its reload, where a character would kind of flip the gun back and do this cool as shit wave motion. I swear, that may have been the only reason that I used it so much. It's simple, but just this little quirk gave it so much character. It's the perfect example of a weapon that functionally isn't much different from any of the others, but stands above just with vibes. You know, it's all about the presentation here. And in a similar vein, in MW3, I loved the FAD, but less for that reload and more for its iron sights. I think I'm just attracted to anything that looks a little bit different, you know? That's why my celebrity crush is Steve Buscemi. I'm not gay though. I don't fully understand why. Realistically though, I think the reason I always gravitated toward it was because it was the last AR that you unlocked. And so when I prestiged, I immediately spent my first unlock token on it, and at that point, kind of felt obligated to use it as much as possible. And I think if I actually go back to like my original account, you would see that at least half of my classes probably still have this thing on. And the third of my holy trinity of 5.56 sized holes is the BO1 FAMAS. Now, this is one that I wager every single person on Earth is familiar with. As along with the AK-74U, this was the meta back in the day. And while the gun has returned a ton over the years, the specific version that I'm still hung up on is as follows. BO1 FAMAS with suppressor and a red dot sight with a yellow nuke symbol inside. Then we're gonna add some tiger camo and my personal lost clan tag etched into the side. Forget the gunsmith. This was the last time that I ever truly felt like a weapon was my own in Call of Duty. It's my spirit animal. I mean, sure, everyone was using the FAMAS, but not this FAMAS. This one was handcrafted through my own blood, sweat, and COD points back before those just became synonyms for cash money. And I didn't mean for this to become like a whole old COD versus new COD thing, but I just feel like in modern games, I don't have these kinds of weapons anymore because I'm usually so focused on the camo grind or min-maxing some event, you know? Plus with the gunsmith, you can kind of build the same gun in so many different ways that very rarely do they actually feel distinct from one another anymore, enough to even care which one you equip as a base. But back in the day, there were some really special feeling weapons. Take the Honey Badger from Ghosts, which came with an integrated suppressor and became the perfect choice for someone like me who put Ghost on back in BO1 and just never really removed it. But it doesn't even have to be that in your face. Like, I remember loving the Tar back in MW2 again, just because the red dot on it was a circle instead of a square. Or there's the G11 back again in Black Ops, that just looks like if you asked me to draw a gun. And what really set it apart from all the other 3-round burst ARs was that it only had 2 attachments available, both of which were just sights. It's just goofy, you know? You don't put this gun on your class unless you're here for a good time, you know? And again, I say it a lot, that's what games are. You're doing this to have a good time, not a long time. Oh, and hey, speaking of dying really quickly because of gun choices, SMGs. SMGs are up next, which of course stands for Speedy Mikos that are built around moving fast and asking questions never. And that is right where our first gun comes in, the UMP-45. It's just impossible to look at this thing and not feel something, you know? Its iconic iron sights mixed with 0 recoil. You know what, I think I'm starting to sense a pattern here. And while a lot of SMGs in this era were pea shooters, turning even the truest of one-shots into bullet sponges, the UMP never felt like you were at a disadvantage against, well, fucking anything, really. And thankfully, this one did actually come back a few times over the years. First in MW3, and then again in MW3, again. But one that I always forget about is Infinite Warfare, who had this, along with actually a handful of old school guns, come back as part of their own classic category, including some that we'll get to later in this video. How's that for a hook? Mom, am I a YouTuber now? Another fun one was the Peacekeeper in BO2. And quick disclaimer, I might be fucking crazy here, but to me, a lot of BO2's guns all kind of blend together in my hippocampus. And so when the Peacekeeper came out, even though it was functionally the same as most other automatic weapons, living somewhere in between an SMG and an AR, the cool name and its slick white coating instantly made it pierce through the noise. Another SMG that I can't stop thinking about, but not from a place of fond memories, but from one of sadness, is actually from Advanced Warfare, which, yes, I am counting as classic COD. Sue me. This is the ASM-1, a little Tommy gun looking thing, but from the future. A Thomas gun, if you will. And if you played Advanced Warfare, you'll know that this was the first game with supply drops, and they really hit them hard, offering what's effectively weapon blueprints in drops that had to be randomly pulled. But unlike some games later, these blueprints would alter the gun's base stats. And what resulted was the ASM-1 Speakeasy variant, which was just head and shoulders above the rest, increasing the fire rate and coming with extended mags, which meant that this gun's self-professed best-in-class damage was now hurtling at you faster and in more volume. This was the kind of gun that once you got, you never took off your class. And unfortunately, I am gonna have to report that I never actually unlocked this gun myself. It's just something that I've had to, you know, work through over the last 10 years. My therapist was helping, but you know what they say. The biggest regrets in life aren't from the things you've done. They're from the things that you just didn't gamble enough to earn in a game marketed to children. Okay, on to shotguns. You either love them or you hate them. Or you feel any other way about them because life isn't binary. I hope we all learned a valuable life lesson here today. And I want to talk about the spaz for a minute. Now, most people, when they think about this gun, they think of the MW2 version, with that satisfying pump after every shot that made it one of the most popular secondaries on the market. But for me, the most memorable was actually the BO1 version, where they folded its stock in, flipped that thing to semi-auto, and just made it overall a blast to use. I used to run it with a suppressor on because, again, I was a little ghost bitch, and this gun, I think, single-handedly taught me how to move from cover to cover. But BO1 was really only my second Call of Duty game that I played online. And so I was still kind of figuring out how to raise my KD from its 0.74 all the way up to its barely positive 1.09, baby. And a large part of that was this shotgun right here, where its short range finally made it click for me that I had to approach every potential fight strategically and not just blindly sprint out into the open. All of that said, though, I definitely don't want to minimize the pump shotguns in this series, which are definitely some of the most satisfying. Like that World at War trench gun sound, it was like ASMR before ASMR. And what I always considered to be the final evolution to the trench then is the TAC-19. Now built a full 100 years later, now in the future, this just has the meatiest sonic blast every time you pull the trigger. But another BO1 shotgun that I will always hold near and dear is the Olympia. Your standard double-barrel shotgun, but with the cool gimmick that the shells went in vertically. And this was a big one over in Zombies. You know, if you played back then, you'll know about the constant battle between those who bought the Olympia or the M14 in the starting room, or the secret third group of people who just kept the 1911 forever, afraid of change. Although, admittedly, when I did need to buy a gun off the wall, it was almost always that M14 over the Olympia, just because it was better for point whoring. But this was a game about regular whoring, then I'd have spent that $500 on this sexy piece in a heartbeat. I'm not weird, you're weird. And don't worry, I'm gonna talk about the Model 1887s too. A gun that you could technically use as a single, but it is way more fun as a pair. With its iconic and unrealistic dual wield attachment that should break your fucking arms off, but instead you're rewarded with one of the slickest reloads in all of gaming. You just flick them back. Don't ask how mechanically it works, just accept that you are cool as hell. Plus, these things were actually crazy OP on launch because they accidentally gave them unlimited range or something like that. Although, thankfully, Infinity Ward in a rare for those days patch did tone them down a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, they are still pretty damn powerful, but there's just a lot of really crazy OP stuff in this game to begin with that even after the patch, they just kind of fell somewhere in the middle of that tier list. And now we're on to LMGs, which honestly for me are kind of tough to remember because even in the off chance that I ever did find myself using these heavy Costco-sized bullet boxes, they all kinda act the same. They have lots of ammo, they take a long time to reload, and are pretty much always outclassed by that particular game's meta AR. But I did rack my brain, and I did find a few that stood out to me. First was the Stoner. Now, I don't really know why I love this gun so much, but if I had to guess, it was because it was really just an AR with a slower fire rate. Even the ammo count was just your standard 30. And so it kind of gave me the pride and accomplishment feeling of getting outside my comfort zone and experiencing another part of the game, you know, widening my weapon palette a bit, but without actually doing any of that. Like, it's just a fucking AR, man. Now, outside of that, a few others that come to mind are the DP-28 from World at War, or because of its unique mag and reload, we always called the Dinner Plate 28, and nothing else associated with that acronym. No, sir. I also actually really liked the chainsaw over in Ghosts, too, which was just this beefy mini gun sort of thing that had no iron sight, so you just had to fire it from the hip. You hit the left trigger and it just kind of zooms in a little bit. Although, as for like regular LMGs though, the PKP in MW3 for some reason always stuck out. I think just because it was one of my friend's favorite weapons back in the day, so one game I decided to give it a try and went like 2-16 or something and just never touched it again. I will say though that I did have a good time with the old XMGs in Advanced Warfare for a while, which one-upped the models by now being dual-wield LMGs that realistically should be breaking your entire fucking spine now. I remember you could even mount them to become your own little sentry gun. It was actually really cool and unique. I also didn't fully know where to place this one, but the EM1 also from Advanced Warfare was also a pretty good fun mix-up, you know, that they did place under the heavy section, so I'm gonna talk about it here if you don't mind. But this here was, of course, the infamous laser gun that I feel like has gotten more coverage after they eventually brought it back into famed World War II shooter COD Vanguard a few years ago. But in Advanced Warfare, where it actually fit the vibe, I loved this thing. Now, it wasn't super powerful by any means, and you weren't really running the lobby if you used it. It was just fun, you know, a neat little spice added to your life. And everybody loves spice. Hit me, baby, one more time. Who's this? What do the Spice Girls do? And we're on to snipers. The first of which, I don't think I even need to tell you. I just need to play you the sound. Oh my fucking god! That's right. This is the Intervention. The single gun that I give credit to for COD latching itself into the minds of the millennial youth. A crisp, satisfying noise that's so addicting that half the time I wouldn't even be shooting at anything. I'd just run around the map shooting at barrels and shit. And you know what? That was enough for me. This thing made just as many careers as it ended, as quickscoping, which was already decently popular in COD 4, just took off in this game. When it became so easy, even I could do it. Shit. Fuck. Damn it. But if you were still having a bit of trouble, you could always fall back to the simpler Barrett. Because the Barrett 50 cal in MW2 was, in my opinion, just as satisfying to use, just without that smooth, rechambering rhythm of the Intervention. But it more than made up for it with a meaty and loud gunshot, plus the ability to spam it at close range. If the Intervention was for the fast, surgical quickscope, then the Barrett was all about that rapid-fire no-scope. Notice, by the way, that neither of those are how you're actually supposed to use a sniper. And I'm not gonna lie, that's really it as far as snipers are concerned. Obviously, there are plenty of others. You know, you got the Dragunov, the L96, etc. But to me, they always seemed like cheap knockoffs of these two archetypes that already reached their peak back in 2009. And that finally brings us to pistols. Shit. Where first and foremost, I've gotta pay my respects to the M1911, which you can see evolve throughout 2 decades of the franchise. You've got the pocket stapler feel of the Colt 1911 in World at War, going all the way up to the meaty precision feel in modern installments. But my favorite has got to be the Black Ops 1 version, with what might actually rival the Intervention for most satisfying reload sound to me. Then I want to talk about the Executioner from BO2, simply because I want this gun back in the sandbox. First of all, it was a revolver, which already we have a surprising lack of nowadays, but it also fired shotgun shells. That's right. Even though shotguns weren't secondaries anymore, life, found a way or some shit. See, while most guns in the pistol slot are all kind of the same flavor, just different brands, this one gave you real pros and cons. You know, it was more powerful up close because of the, shotgun shells, but at a distance, you weren't even gonna hit them. Again, because of the shotgun shells. Plus, it was another weapon that let you pack a second, and had a cool name to boot. And sometimes, I'm gonna be honest, sometimes that's all that it takes. Like, in a similar vein are the FMG-9s, aka the briefcase guns, whose entire claim to fame is just the slick animation that plays when you pull them out for the first time. Also, I legally have to mention the iconic Golden Deagle from COD 4, the weapon that kinda started the gold rush of weapon camos and skins. Although, this one was actually just a completely new weapon in the menu that you unlocked just for reaching max level. So, it wasn't the biggest accomplishment, at least by today's standards, but back then, this thing on your hip carried a certain level of prestige to it. Hey, wait, do you think that's why they called the... But now, that finally takes us to our final weapon, which I think back on probably at least once a week. Not because it was great, but because it was truly like nothing else in the game. And it exists not to fill some niche playstyle or be overpowered fun. It exists seemingly as a joke. This is the Javelin, a launcher that instead of being a simple point and shoot, is more of a point and wait and fire and wait, and the thing that you were aiming at move and miss. I, for the life of me, cannot figure out what the intended purpose of this weapon is. If you want to lock onto kill streaks, you have the Stinger. If you wanted to free fire at enemies, you have the RPG. But this thing sits somewhere in the middle, where you need to lock on, but it doesn't lock on to the actual thing that you want to hit, it just locks onto the area. I guess it's meant to, lock down a specific, lane, but use a claymore, man. What the fuck do you got? This thing's way heavier. Holy shit. And overall, it just feels like it was made to be aggravating to use, which many might say makes it pointless, but I disagree. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Javelin is pointless as an actual weapon, but the fact that it's in this game, I think speaks volumes, because it isn't here to fill a purpose in the sandbox. It's not balanced to be on par with the other launchers in the game. It was just added seemingly for the fuck of it. It was added because it was cool. It was interesting. A gun that proves that you don't always have to be good at something to have value. I mean, half the guns that I talked about here were middle of the pack at best, but became iconic, either to the community or just myself, by doing something different. As small or as large as that might be, you can be remembered for just being yourself. Unless you are someone who actually uses the Javelin, because if so, you're a fucking psychopath. Anyway, that's where I'll end today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Channel members are going by me right now. If you want to become a channel member, I might have a bonus video associated with this one. I don't know. I didn't film it yet. Become a channel member. It's 99 cents a month and you can watch it. I don't fully know what it's going to be. I got to film it still. This is an awful fucking plug. I'm sorry.